welcome to Looking Up. This is a podcast for Christian women. We hope you're having a great day so far and that listening to this podcast will make your day even better, because it's our goal to remind you to look up and encourage you and just have a good conversation here with my dear friend Carla Moore, and I'm Kathy Pollard. We're your hosts for this podcast. Today we're going to talk about something sort of more lighthearted and fun.
12 seconds.
This idea of, are you likable? Do you think you're likable? How to be likable? So before we get into that conversation, wherever it leads us, Carla, how have you been and what have you been up to?
Been fine. This topic of likable makes me think of Sally Field, and this dates me, I'm sure. But remember, she won an Oscar and she said, "You like me. You really like me.
You really like me."
So when you brought this up, I couldn't help thinking, you really like me. But no, I'm doing fine. Everything's
good.
busy. Still working on that balance thing, but it's all good. I'm taking a couple classes at Bear Valley, auditing them. I'm taking John's church history class and Michael Height's Luke class, and I'm really enjoying that. So that's kind of kept me busy. I've got a ladies' day this weekend that I'm doing with Erin in Texas. So
that'll be so
lots of stuff going on this weekend and just right now. So, but it's all good.
What's going on there? What's your topic this weekend?
The topic is called Nurturing the Precious Souls Around Us.
Oh,
so yeah, it's going to be.
So is that I've enjoyed the study. Family or what's the?
Well, I think
what's
Erin
the point?
I think Erin is going to talk more about, our family, our church family, the people around us, more of kind of the practical stuff. And I was going to try to focus on who are the precious, or who are the souls, and how do we nurture them when we see them as God sees them and treat them as God treats them. That's kind of where I'm trying to go with it. So I'm never finished with a lesson until I stand up to give it. Are you normally are much more ready than
I am. I usually write it out, but then I keep going back there and I'm scratching things out and changing things around. And Neil's the one that he writes it and memorizes it, and that's it.
Yeah, I can't memorize anything. I usually use my computer to make an outline and do the study, and I plug things in on I type it, but then I write it on my Notability on my iPad, because I feel like when I write it, I retain it better.
Yeah.
So then I go back over it, but I'm just always, I never feel like I completely finish a lesson. I just work on it until I get up, and then pray that it makes sense it's just speaking as I'm evidenced right here is not my gift, but
not true.
No, it is
not true. Not true. No,
all right.
Not true.
Next topic.
Well, by the time this airs, you'll be done with that. So maybe you can share the link. I'm sure they're going to record it, right?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, if you find out, it sounds like a great topic. Maybe you can share it in the Looking Up group and we can listen. Study. Good. Oh. Very cool. Have you been thrifting?
I have nothing real exciting. I found a purse and just some little things. I'm starting to look for some, the whole back and forth to Dripping Springs in Denver. I left most of the clothes that I think I'm going to need for this trip that's coming up in March. And I brought the shoes that I know I'll need, but I don't know exactly what the temperature is going to be. So anyway, I've been looking for some more like travel pants and things like that, but I haven't found anything exciting. My niece did, though. She texted me and said, you're not going to believe what I found in San Marcos, which is a college town. And usually that Goodwill is just kind of junky because, a college town often just is kind of the cast off stuff from students when they don't want to take it back home with them when they leave for the summer or whatever.
That makes sense.
But she found like 6 or 7 Johnny Was tops, and that brand is called Johnny Was. What is that name anyway? Johnny Was what? Johnny Was Happy Designer? I don't know, but it's an expensive brand. Like t-shirts can be $150, and more. It's all the embroidery kind of fun colors and stuff. Anyway, she found 6 or 7 of them in a row. So she hit the jackpot, and she sent me a picture, and she's just better at that. She spends a lot more time on it than I do. So it's
was not wearing $150 t-shirts when I was in college. Actually, I'm not wearing $150 t-shirts now.
Yeah.
Come to think of it.
Let's make that clarification. Yeah. Well, I mean, it probably wasn't a college student, but who
Yeah.
knows? It may have
Yeah.
been. You never know
Ooh,
these days.
yeah.
But
I
to just
remember my
get rid
roommate.
of 7 of them, I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
know. That's
crazy.
crazy. My
Yeah.
roommate when I was in college wore Clinique makeup, and I was a
Mhm.
drugstore makeup girl.
Yeah.
I remember being so jealous.
Yeah. She got to go to the Clinique counter.
Yeah, yeah. And a friend of ours was her mom was doing Mary Kay
Hmm.
when I was in college, and we went home with her for the weekend, and her mom gave us all Mary Kay facials, and I splurged. I mean, I had no money in college. I was working 3 jobs and putting all the money toward my tuition,
Hmm.
and I had no money, but I spent what I didn't have. All of
Mary
this
Kay.
Mary Kay stuff and felt so fancy.
Yeah. Well, that's been around a long time.
It really has. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's going on the homestead?
Well, we just celebrated Dale and Janelle's birthday. We combined their birthday celebration
Mhm.
Monday night and had a shrimp boil. It was my first
Mm.
time doing one of those. I think it turned out pretty good. So that was fun. And I was going to show you these little cute earrings. Can you see those?
Love those.
Are they
I want her
pretty?
to put that online so we can order.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she is selling them. I just don't know if they're online, but she makes them out of leather and she brought
Mhm.
over a whole pile of them Monday night. So all of us girls, she was like, just pick out the one you want. And so I chose this one. It looks really cute with my
Yeah.
coffee sweatshirt I'm wearing today.
Hmm.
But she's so talented. But I was going to show you, she has these really, professional looking, I don't know if that's showing up,
Yeah,
but
I can see.
professional looking cards that the name of her brand is Shaggy Sheep Company.
Hmm.
And I can't remember if I mentioned here already, but the name comes from, she would reference shabby chic, a
Hmm.
while back. And Dale
Yep.
always thought she was saying shaggy sheep. So that's
Dale.
why that's the name of her brand.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to share that because they're so cute.
Those are adorable. Really, really
Hmm.
good
And they're
job. And
real, they're leather, but they're real lightweight,
that's the thing
So
about leather. They're lightweight
yeah,
and you can
yeah.
wear them all day and it doesn't bother your ears.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
cute.
Oh, I also wanted to share before I forget, because I asked for everybody to pray for my sister,
Hmm.
Christy, and she received the best news. Her doctor said it could not have gone better,
Mm.
and that she's 99% cancer free. So I want to thank everybody for thinking of her and praying for her and pass along that really good
Yeah,
news, that report that she got. So
that truly
thank
is
God for that.
awesome. Awesome in the best sense.
Yes,
Thankful.
exactly.
Well, is she having any like leftover symptoms of that week by herself, that radioactivity stuff?
Yes.
She's not glowing green, is she?
Well, yeah, I think it'll probably take her a while to feel back to normal anyway, just because of having to go off of, her thyroid
Hmm.
medicine for so long and everything. But day by day, I said whenever she feels up to it, we're all going to get together and celebrate and have a big
Yeah,
party. So we look forward
yeah,
to that.
good.
Yeah.
Well, so have you had any more issues with hay out in the barn and what's going on in that arena?
Well, Neil's picking up some more today because we were getting pretty low. And he is bringing, well, he was bringing, I don't know if he's back yet or not, but he was bringing back 47 hay bales. And we only have a small trailer, a pull behind trailer for the truck.
Yeah,
So he said, you can imagine how that looked. He filled the whole trailer and the back of his pickup truck with
I'm
all of
picturing
this
him
hay.
dragging
Yeah.
underneath an
So
overpass somewhere.
exactly. So, but we're grateful to find some because it's getting a little bit scarce around here.
Really?
And we don't really have a place to store a lot of hay. So that's been our challenge. But
Where do you
anyway,
keep it?
and we have a sorry. We have like a metal garage thing that you laughing at me.
Because you do this when you're
Husband,
uncomfortable. You're like, you pull
I
the,
do.
you do.
Well, that's because I get embarrassed and then my underarms start itching at the same time. So
Well, I guess this is better than this.
that's right.
Just don't start doing that.
Oh me. We have like a covered garage area. We have a
Uh,
metal shed that has
yeah.
like a little covered area where we
Hmm.
keep the lawnmower and Pepe, and
Yeah.
so the back half of that is where we're stacking up all of our hay and then covering with the tarp. So
Yeah. And for
it's
those
not
of you who are new to the podcast, Pepe is not a little French man that they have staying in their garage. It is their
Pepe is our
little
little
ATV.
all-terrain, yeah, vehicle. But so it's pretty close to the barn, and it's not ideal, but it keeps it dry. And
Hmm.
until we eventually we're going to be adding on an extra space in the barn just to store the hay, but we don't have that yet. So
Yeah.
that's all. Oh, and then in a couple weeks, we're going to be breeding Peaches so that she can be ready for the next round of calving and more milk. And so that'll be fun and new and adventuresome for us.
So that's why you do it. I'm not a super country girl, but you have to breed her so she'll have a calf so that the milk will stay coming. So you can't just keep milking her and she won't just keep providing milk. You have to have another calf.
Yeah. So we only won't be getting milk from her 2 months leading up to her calving. So the first 7 months of her pregnancy, we can still milk her. And then we'll give her those last 2 months to dry up and kind of prepare for the birth, put on more weight, all that kind of stuff. So from what I understand,
this is new for you too.
I could just be making this up.
I'm sure you know all what you're talking about. You know more than me. You could fool me.
Right.
Well, that'll be fun. Have a little calf.
Yes,
but you're
yes.
Yeah. So, and you get to choose, you're going to do AI. So you'll choose the sire, I guess. Is that what the bull would be, a sire? Is that what they call it?
I have no idea there.
Okay. All right. Maybe we should avoid this conversation.
Who we bought her from already is going to provide what we need because he wants to keep her line pure so that if she has a girl, he wants to buy her from us. So that's already, that's already all good to go. And then we already have friends who know how to do the deed. So
okay. Moving right along.
We'll
get ourselves into trouble if we linger too long here. AI does not mean artificial intelligence all the time. So
no.
Yeah. Okay. Moving right along.
That's right.
Next topic.
I'm doing some more sourdough kind of things in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You made English muffins, and I've been using more of the discard. I haven't really done a lot with sourdough discard, but I made a Dutch baby with the discard.
What's that?
It's like a German pancake, the kind where it's got a lot of eggs in it and it puffs up.
Oh, like a popover?
Kind of, except it's bigger.
Okay.
But I made one of those, and yesterday I made pizza with the sourdough discard. So I hadn't tried that before. I've made sourdough pizza, but not with the discard. So I'm trying a lot of new things.
I always feel like there's this whole new world of sourdough. I know it's not new because it's been going on for years, but there's this world of sourdough that I'm not a part of. And I want to be. I feel a little bit left out, honestly. But someday I'll be a cool girl and I'll do sourdough.
It's, you know what? I have mixed feelings about it. I feel like I'm doing it because I should be. If you have a little farmette, you should be doing sourdough. And it really is supposed to be very good for you as far as how your body digests it. It's supposed to not give you that sugar, that insulin spike, all those great things about it. But I just don't know. I like to be able to make bread when I want to make bread, when I'm in the mood for it. I don't want to have to think about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And anything sourdough, no matter what they say, you have to think about it ahead of time, at least a day or two.
Yeah. And that was my problem. I mean, years ago, we called it friendship starter, but I felt like I was letting my friendship starter down if I forgot about it. And I just couldn't keep up with it. And I know I mentioned before, we gained weight. So I love baking, and especially baking cookies and bread and stuff like yeast bread. I prefer, of course, that's not as good for you. Or there's probably not anything good for you about it, but it tastes good.
It does. And you can still make yeast bread with whole grains, and you can still make it healthy. But the friendship starter, I think, is like the one that Alicia Pennington gave me that I mentioned last week. And what I like about hers is that she keeps it in the freezer. So that's pretty nice.
So there's less maintenance, right? That way.
Yeah.
But there's sounds like quite a bit on the front end.
Yeah, you still have to think about it, and hang out with it for a few days before you make something with it. But
I'm sitting here looking at, there's 5 bananas sitting next to the sink that are black because Celicia Grider, you are in my head every time I have black bananas because she makes banana bread. She will not let me, I can't throw them out. I do, because sometimes you just have to, but I have all these good intentions. and I just don't have time, or I find something different to do. So
Yeah.
things have just changed.
Mm-hmm.
That I miss that part. Lots of parts.
Lots of parts.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. We've already talked about that today
Uh,
too.
yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share with you. I kind of was going to bring up some stuff, and I thought I'm saving that for next week.
Why? Why are you saving it for next week?
Well, because something will happen between now and next week that'll make it more interesting for me to talk about it.
Oh, that sounds mysterious.
It's not, but
Well, you have Freed Hardeman lectures coming up. When is that?
2 weeks from today.
Okay.
Well, the lectureship starts before then, but I
Mm-hmm.
actually speak 2 weeks from today. I think I'm the last day of the lectureship.
Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
What is your topic?
It's kind of a long title. It's something like,
I thought you'd forgotten.
no, it's something like because he is giving us a banquet, we have a reason to celebrate, or
Mm-hmm.
something. It's Revelation 19 and
Okay.
the passage about the bride and the groom and the bride and her being arrayed in fine linen and the marriage supper of the Lamb. You know,
Okay.
that's my text.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know you enjoy that study, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
Ready?
I'm ready. Well, it's your turn. So I'm waiting
I'm
for you.
driving.
You're
I'm
driving.
driving. So anyway, we're talking about how to be more likable. And the reason this came up, sometimes ideas for these episodes come about in the most convoluted way. And today is just one of those examples because I ran across a book in, one of my Kindle feeds or Amazon. I don't even know what it was, but I ran across this book that intrigued me, and it was called, I had to write it down, Life in Five Senses.
Hmm.
And the whole premise behind the book is really intriguing, is that most of us tend to neglect at least one of our senses.
Okay.
And so, um, and everybody leans more heavily on, one or more of our five senses. And so the whole idea is she walks you through figuring out which sense you tend to neglect and how to embrace it more so that you have a more fuller expression of life, more
Mm-hmm.
enjoyment of living, more awareness, more blah, blah, blah. And anyway, I haven't read the book. I haven't bought the book. I'm not, I don't know
All you
anything
got's the
about
title,
it.
girl.
All I got was the title and what it was about, which I thought was intriguing. And so, because of that, I ended up looking at the author. Her name is Gretchen Rubin, and found out that she is some sort of philosopher who her expertise is happiness, like people's behavior and how it's tied to happiness. And so, her podcast is called the Happier Podcast.
Mm.
And so, then as I'm going down this trail, I thought, well, what does she have to say? And I found one episode where a portion of that episode was covering a surprising way to be more likable. And so I listened to it, and it was very interesting. I'm going to share what she had to say. But that's what led to this that would be a fun conversation. So let me just go ahead and say I am not recommending Gretchen Rubin. I don't know anything about her.
Sorry.
I don't know anything about her podcast. I've only listened to this one segment of one podcast, and I don't know anything about this book. But that's how we got here.
Okay.
But on this podcast, the surprising way to be more likable is don't be so accommodating. That was her tip. I know, isn't that weird?
That is weird.
And the example that she gave is that when you're with friends, you're going out to dinner, hey, you guys want to go out to eat? And then you say, where do you want to go? Oh, I don't care, wherever you want to go. And she said, really, people don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't like it when you say that. And they want you to give input. They want you to give them a suggestion in your opinion. And she was explaining how you think you're just being accommodating and easygoing and whatever you pick, I'm happy with. But they think you're putting all the work on us. Now we have to come up with something and you're not even offering any suggestion, So that was the premise behind all of that, which was interesting by itself.
Yeah, I don't know if I completely agree with that. I can
I
see
know.
how it's helpful when somebody says, okay, here's three places. Where would you like to go? Rather than I don't care, wherever. But
Well, and you're
I get what
smart
she's saying.
because that's exactly the suggestion that she made.
Yeah.
She's like, at least give them something and say, well, I really like Mexican or Italian, or, at least give them narrow the field. That's exactly what she said. But I do acknowledge that, sometimes Neil and I go out to eat on Sundays after church, and we go back and forth every single time. Where do you want to go? I don't care. You pick. No, I picked last time. You pick. No, it's your turn. You pick. Really, I don't care. Where do you want to go? We go through this whole thing, and it's exhausting.
I just always tell John, I just reserve the right to veto. That's all I want to do. I just want to be able to say no, somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, usually it goes something like Neil saying, well, where I want to go. And I'm going, oh.
Where does he want to go? Barbecue.
Yeah, Mission Barbecue or, something like that. But or a steakhouse. It's either barbecue or a steakhouse. Pretty much
John would pick Rudy's every day of the week.
What's that?
Rudy's Barbecue. It's a gas station with barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad, but like, I confess that sometimes when we're going down the road, if I see a Rudy's sign, I'm like, look over there, to distract
the other way
from, I like it, but it's just, every time.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, sorry. I'm just distracting.
Since we're already distracted, we do shout out to our friends Jeremy and Ashley Waddell, because they have opened up their own food truck called Bub's Barbecue, and he has got it down pat. I mean, he can smoke a good brisket. Isn't it your brother that does a really good brisket? Yeah. I think you would give your brother a run for his money, really? Actually.
Yeah. Might have to have a cook-off.
Right? It is very good. But anyways, so that's how we landed here. And I thought we should talk about that. Yeah. And, do you think of yourself as a likable person? Do you come across that way? And so I figured we might want to start out with some disclaimers. First of all,
go ahead.
We're not having this topic because we think we're likable and we've got it all figured out.
How many times have we said that?
I was going to say, as with most topics, we were just interested in this topic and thought it would be fun to talk about. So, like I said, we're not exactly sure where this is going to land. We just thought it would be fun to talk about. I thought it would be fun to talk about. Also, another thing to point out, there is, passages in the Bible about the fact that living the Christian life means that the world may hate you because they don't understand or they don't like the rightness that you're standing up for, as we read in John 15, 18 through 20. So I did want to point that out also. We're not talking about, assuming that everybody needs to like you all the time or anything like that. This is a way more casual conversation.
Yeah.
And then finally, some people aren't going to like us just because they don't. No matter what you do.
Something's wrong with them, but whatever.
That's just how it is. I am just not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. That's life. So we're not really talking about any of that kind of stuff. We're just talking about being likable in general. So I thought I would ask a couple of questions to get the conversation going. And one of them is a personal question for you, Carla. And so think back into your growing up years, back into your long time ago history.
20 years ago?
Maybe like middle school, high school, somewhere around there. Do you remember feeling, did you ever go through a phase where you just really wanted to be liked and, maybe not to the point of desperately wanting to be liked, but did you ever have this sort of awkward period or this phase where you felt like you had to try harder to be liked, or maybe you even started doing something or gave into something or adopted a trend that you didn't even like just to be liked? Do you remember anything like that from your growing up?
First of all, I'm worried that people are not going to like me because I swallowed wrong and now I have to keep clearing my throat. Sorry. Try to get that out of the way. I remember like 6th and 7th grade in particular. That's such an awkward age. At least it was for me. Something about being 12, 13 years old. And it felt like, it seemed like a lot of it centered around always being part of a trio. And, anytime that happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. And still, even as an adult, that happens. But when there's 3 girls, it seems like 2 are going to be closer than the one that's not, they're all friends, but these two are going to pick each other, and then this one's going to feel left out at some point. And I know I had a lot of that. I remember
Mm-hmm.
even the girls' names, and I don't hold anything against them. We were all just
Mm-hmm.
immature then. But yeah, there's so much of that. When I think about it, it even gives me that icky feeling in my
Mm-hmm.
stomach of remembering trying to figure out where to fit in, especially when you know that you're, maybe before you're a Christian, but you've been brought up that way. And so there's something different about you anyway, and we're supposed to be, but
Mm-hmm.
yet at that age, it's still important to be liked by people. And so trying to figure out the balance there is a
Mm-hmm.
tough thing, to look like them, but not look like them, to feel pressure to dress like them or say things like them. I'm not even talking about things that are wrong. I'm just saying
Mm-hmm. Right.
style or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a kind of a hard place to be.
Well, you hit the nail on the head because something I find myself saying a lot when I see drama amongst adults. I always say,
Hmm.
what is this, sixth grade?
Yeah.
Because
Uh-huh.
that just in my mind is stuck as that time period when I remember that whole, I don't know if you'd use the word rivalry or what, but that whole, are you going to sit by me today in lunch? Are
Hmm.
and like you said, usually it involves two or three friends and all the drama that goes along with that. And that's when I first remember things getting awkward in relationships.
Yeah.
So sixth grade and beyond. Um, so as we start out, I was thinking, number one, there are some people that just aren't likable, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all know people that just aren't likable for whatever reason. Maybe they're prickly
Or
or
difficult. Yeah.
gruff or, and you kind of have to, there are those people that you kind of have to say, but once you get to know them,
Yeah.
they're a good soul. They have a tender heart underneath all of that
Hmm.
cactus exterior. You kind of make those little apologies for them.
Right.
And or those people that are like that, but you love them anyway because you're supposed to, and you just make that decision to love them anyway. Well, do they know that they're not likable?
Mm.
Do you think they know that they're not and they don't care? Or do they just not see it themselves?
I think it's a mixture of both, maybe, depending on who it is. When you brought this topic up, immediately what comes to mind are, instead of thinking about what's likable, you tend to think about, well, what about those people that you have difficulty liking, and what is it, the characteristics that they have?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking of one in particular that, kind of like you said, at first, this person was very prickly and very difficult, just difficult. But investing the time in getting to know this person, I find out what a gem they are.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so I think it probably has something to do with their family circumstance or something in their past that made them that way. Or,
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about the difference between personality and character, and some people's personality is just, I don't know, because character to me means that you're working on those things that will make you more likable or
Mm-hmm.
pleasant. There's lots of different synonyms I think we could use. Pleasant would be one of them, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But some people just on the surface have protection and barriers, and there's something about them that makes you have to look twice or dig a little deeper or make more of
Mm-hmm.
an effort. But I don't think, trying to think if there's ever been a person who I started off just really having a difficult time with, that if I didn't invest in them, or if I did invest in them, I ended up
Yeah.
really liking them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of anybody that's true of. So
Mm-hmm.
invest in them, I guess, is a
Mm-hmm.
is a tip.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking about, I don't know if you've ever been told by anybody, okay, now in adulthood, I'm not talking about sixth grade,
Hmm.
that, or you found out that somebody didn't like you in adulthood. Even the phrasing sounds very elementary, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was thinking about, several years ago, I've shared this with you before, that somebody came and admitted to me that they didn't like me because I was too huggy and I came across as shallow. And that's what made me think about when you give off a certain impression or certain vibes, and you're not even aware of it, and that it's coming across in an off-putting way, or you think you're doing one thing, but it's being received or coming across completely different. And so, it really caught me off guard because I thought, what?
Yeah.
I mean,
Something's wrong with you.
what? I grew up hugging people. I've always been a hugger, and we've talked about this before, but, I've scaled my hugging way back since then because I don't know what it was, but that was the impression that I was giving. And so the other night, all the kids were here we celebrated Dale and Janelle's birthday, and we were talking about texting and how sometimes when you're reading somebody's text, we kind of insert things that aren't there. We read it in a certain tone because there's no emoji attached to it.
Yeah.
There's no exclamation point. It's just a short, brief answer with a period. And you're going, are they mad at me? Are they not really wanting to do this? Are they, we're kind of
you get the thumbs up and that's it.
Yeah. And so it generated this conversation about how there are certain people that you get a text from and they always sound mad.
Yeah.
But they're not that way in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remind yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I have one in mind in particular.
They're not mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
You're scrolling back. What did I say?
Yeah.
Well, so in the midst of this conversation, one of my sons, whose name I shall not mention, said that my texts come across as mad. And I went, what? No, they don't.
You're very proper with your texting. Like you have commas and what do you call those? Not italics, but quotation marks. Yeah. And so your texts are more formal, but no, I don't ever think you're mad.
Well, so it put me on the defensive and I was like, no, they're not. I am very careful about that. And so, that was Monday night. And ever since then, every time I text somebody, I'm looking back going, what can I add to this to make it look more
a bunch of happy faces.
Because again, sometimes you think you're making these assumptions that what you're giving off is going to be received one way, and it's just not, and I'm looking at him going, what? So, we think we're likable, but do we even know when we're not? Could we be giving off vibes that are being perceived in a different way? That was just something I thought might be worth thinking about. So then go ahead.
Well, are you continuing that or are you leaving that? Because I was going to make a comment about that.
Make a comment about that, please.
Well, I remember when we were first married, my mom told me that someone had told her that I didn't look happy. And she told me, mothers tell you things that nobody else will. And she was basically saying, we talk about our resting face now. Somebody will say, I just have a resting face that makes that face. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I felt back then. It wasn't that I was unhappy. I mean, I was a newlywed, so there was a lot of different transition going on in my life, but I wasn't unhappy at all. But it made me really think about what a vibe am I putting off? So I tried to be more conscious of what I looked like and tried to smile more, even though I remember saying it feels fake to just go around pasting a smile on. So there's more to it. I think you have to really concentrate on what you're thinking and we want to be approachable. And if you're wearing a resting face that looks mean, I think we just can't say that's another one of those things. That's just who I am. Mm-hmm. I think we need to do what we can to have a pleasant exterior. But I don't guess we all know that we're doing that, because I didn't know that until my mom told me. But didn't I tell you one time about seeing a picture of myself looking at someone? I was thinking I brought this up before. I saw a picture of myself looking at someone, this was in high school, that I didn't like.
Oh, no.
Someone just happened to snap a picture of me, and I saw what my face looked like when I was looking at her. Boy, you talk about a mirror on my soul.
Oh, wow.
Because, and I think it's still somewhere in my mom's photographs, but it it was very telling. It was like I could see the disdain on my face, and anyone that knew me knew that that was what I was feeling. So I think we have to be careful about our facial expressions, and that helps with likability, doesn't it?
It does. And that's something that I have to be aware of all the time. And I always know when I'm not, like when I let it slip. If I just get comfortable and I'm just sitting there listening to the conversations, usually if somebody says to me, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, oops."
I hate that question.
My normal face slipped out. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Or I'm thinking about something else or whatever.
Exactly. Well, I kind of thought, if there is somebody that gives off that unlikable vibe, what usually does that look like? When you meet somebody that you're just not drawn to immediately, what is it about that person that made them seem, we've already talked about the fact that oftentimes when you take the time to get to know somebody, there's more to it. But what is it about them that made them seem unlikable?
Well, there's usually a frown of some sort, and
Yeah.
not necessarily just a real obvious one, but I think you see it more in the forehead and the eyes, and there's just something about them that you feel this kind of force field around them that's don't touch me, don't look at me, don't talk to me. And so, I mean, that's what I think of, I guess, is something that looks like a frown. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking about a personality that seems gruff,
Mm-hmm.
like they always have that little bit of a scowl, or when you're talking to them and they kind of look at you like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Do you even know what you're talking about?"
Yeah. Someone that makes you feel insignificant or,
Yes, stupid.
yeah, stupid. Mm-hmm.
Can we say that word?
I sure hope so. It's a real word.
I know. Ah. Yeah, so I was thinking about the opposite of that. You were mentioning, watching your face, minding your countenance, and but on the other hand, that can go too far.
Yeah. Being fake.
Yes, and I'm thinking of this encounter in particular where every single time I would talk to somebody and say, "How are you doing?" "Fantastic."
Hmm.
Every single time. And then they would come back with, "How are you?" Well, I feel like I can't just go fine.
You have to be
I have
better.
to answer in kind, or and it
Yeah.
just, after a while you just kind of go, "I don't even want to ask you how you're doing because I don't feel like dealing with that whole fantastic thing." So
Hmm.
so part of it is, and the part of the receiver too, what's going on in my mind when I'm around you, that
Yeah.
obviously is going to play a lot of part in that too.
Hmm.
Okay, so anyway, let's move on to the nitty gritty.
Okay.
So the second question would be, there are some people that are very likable just without even really having to know them. And right off the bat, you're drawn to them. They're very appealing. You want to get to know them. You feel like you would want them for a friend. So what makes them that way? And I'm not necessarily, we've talked about individuals on this podcast before that, we both look up to, we admire them for this and that characteristic and selfless. I'm not even really necessarily talking about somebody that we admire because we've, had time to get to know them and see that they're admirable or whatever, but just that whole superficially meeting somebody for the first time, they're very likable. What draws you to that person? What is it about them that makes them that way?
I think uh, the first thing that comes out really quickly is, are they interested in you?
Mm.
Are they less interested in themselves than they are in you? And not that, I mean, if you're being the same way, then you're interested in them and there's a give and take conversation going on. But someone who asks you questions about your life and that is just genuinely wanting to know what you think and who you are and what makes you tick. And, that may not be more of a surface thing, which may be what you're asking, but someone who indicates an interest in you or in other people, not necessarily you, but is not all about themselves. And that comes
Mm-hmm.
out pretty quickly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not someone that is all about what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, what I've done, what I've accomplished, where I've been. And so that usually comes out pretty quick. But the other thing I think of as far as likability is someone with a sense of humor,
Mm.
and not just about, not I'm not talking about a sense of humor that makes fun of people,
Right.
but a sense of humor that's self-deprecating or just thinks of, I don't know, when I think of happy families, I'm thinking of one in particular, and they're laughing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And John's family was like this. His dad laughed at so many different things. Everything he turned into a story, and he made it something to laugh about. And not that he wasn't serious when the time came to be serious, and this other family too, but they just enjoyed life and they didn't take things too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there's lots of other things, and I'm sure we'll talk about them, but those two come to the top of my mind when I think about someone that's likable, is someone that's not self-absorbed and someone that has a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm. Those are good ones. I was trying to think about it if I had to nail it down. And you start thinking about individuals in your
Mm-hmm.
mind, the interactions that you have through the week, the people that you've talked to. And I really kept coming back to this whole idea of presence
Yeah.
and somebody that just really sees you. And when you talk to them, maybe they stop and face you and look you in the eyes and just have a real conversation with you. And they don't
Mm-hmm.
look like they're on their way somewhere else or
Yeah.
distracted, or you don't feel like you're like, I don't want to keep you. You're obviously busy or heading
Yeah.
out, or, and we all are. We're
Mm-hmm.
all busy and have things on our mind. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying I'm drawn to people that um, when I see them, they see me, which I
Yeah.
know sounds very selfish, but I'm just drawn to that. And I feel
Sure.
like it's such a powerful gift that somebody has to give you their presence and their attention. And, when you're talking to them, have you ever talked to somebody and like they ask you a question and you start to answer it, but you could tell they're not even listening to you,
Oh
or you
yeah.
just
Oh
need to,
yeah.
you need to hurry up and rush through your answer because they
Mm,
don't really care about the answer because they need to get on their way.
yeah.
But somebody that just pauses and makes you feel like they actually do want to see you, they do want to talk to you, they do want to hear what you have to say. And then you move along, and it just seems like that encounter with them was refreshing
Mm-hmm.
and a connection. And I find
Yeah.
that extremely magnetic and very likable. And it makes me pause and think about my own offerings and what I present, because I know there are times when I'm trying to remember I need to talk to so and so, or I
Right.
need to do this, or I need to do this before class, or I need to. But and even in my own family, you know, um, offering that kind of presence and gift and things like that. So um, I thought it was really interesting because, again, what you appreciate in other people is not necessarily something I'm turning around and offering myself.
I think you do though, but noticing those things about people and then really thinking about it like we're trying to do today makes us want to emulate those same things. But I think when we appreciate those things about people, I think it automatically, I mean, I know it has to be intentionality, but I think we start absorbing those things. And when there's someone we admire, we want to be like, then we think about what is it about them.
Mm-hmm.
But like going back to what you said, someone who yawns when you're talking. Now,
Just
if it's one
just
o'clock in the
saying that
morning,
is making me want to yawn. You just using that word. So now I'm trying really
well,
hard
if
not
I'm talking, no one would be able to see you. So it's okay. You just
to.
yawn away and I'll not take offense. But really, if you're it's one thing if it's middle of the night, but if you're just having a conversation and they yawn, and not only yawn, but go, oh, and I've seen people do that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just such an off-putting thing. Or to as soon as you start talking, they look down at their phone.
Oh,
So there's
yes.
ways that
Ugh.
you just indicate that I'm not interested in anything you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that those are rude things. And those are just, to me, they're not acceptable. There's things that we do that we don't know we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, those are some things that we do that are they're just not right, to make
Mm-hmm.
someone feel so inferior. And so I hope that I can't imagine anybody listening would do that. But I remember one time humorously, there was a preacher, and this was right after we got married. So lots of years have passed, but he was shaking hands, preachers do that, shaking hands as people walk out the door. And it was a man that knew my dad. And I shook his hand. He said, "How are you doing? How's your dad doing?" And I said, "Well, dad just got out of the hospital." And he said, "Well, good, good, good." It was one of those
Oh,
things that
no.
I didn't hold it against him because I knew it was Sunday morning, he's
Oh
shaking hands as people
no.
leave. But that made me really think about how
Mhm.
am I listening to people? And sometimes that's harder to do. And I've more times than I care to admit, there's somebody that I need to give a message to. I need to give them something. And they're in a group of people.
Mhm.
And I go straight to that person, deliver the message, and then I leave. And then I think, wow, that was so rude of me to not even say anything to the other people in that group. So I hope we give each other grace for
Mhm.
some things like that. Um, but I admire and love people that the people, especially when my kids were little, that would bend down or would get down on
Mhm.
their knee in front of my child
Yeah.
and talk to them on an eye to eye level. And that's
Mhm.
kind of something. There's a gnat. There's probably those bananas in there. Um,
You're gonna have to make that banana bread.
or yeah, don't tell Celicia, I may have to throw them out. But just indicating an interest in my child, it
Mhm.
was so touching to me. So I think there's things we can do that really, really, really speak to I'm interested in you, and I'll be that way.
Yeah, I was thinking about how, and I'm picturing the church building environment, before and
Mm-hmm.
after worship. When I see people and I go, "How are you doing? Good. How are you doing?" But I keep walking, and
Yeah,
there have been a few times when I've thought, "Good grief," and I'll kind of stop and turn around and then answer,
yeah.
"I'm fine. How are you doing?" Just like trying to. I'll
Mm-hmm.
pause and at least look you in the face since you've asked me how I'm
Yeah,
doing. Yeah, well, I was
yeah.
thinking about a couple other things were kind of the opposites of some of the things that turn me off. And, you know, um, the know it all
Mm-hmm. One
mentality,
better. I got
one
one better.
better, one
Mm-hmm.
upper. Anytime you bring up anything, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what you should do. That kind of thing. And Neil said a comment the other day in passing. We were talking about somebody, and he was like, "Well, it's that typical firstborn personality. They know everything." And
Hmm.
I could tell as soon as that came out of his mouth, he was like, I'm not saying that. Just looked at him. I was like, ah, well, but so the opposite of that would be people that ask you questions, like you say, they show interest in what you have to say and
Mhm.
hearing about your way or learning from you without feeling the need to come around and say, yeah, but, and then add their 2 cents worth.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah.
always have to do that.
Just listen
Just
and
listen.
ask more questions about what they said. And I think 90% of the time, the person that does that, and I don't know, maybe that's overestimating, but most of the time, I think people are just trying to relate. I
Mhm.
know I'm thinking of one person in particular that I can't get something out of my mouth before she's saying, I know my mom said blah, 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 whatever.
Mhm.
And, but I know her heart and I know that she doesn't intend to come across as someone who has one better. She's just trying to relate and she's a likable
Mhm.
person. But there's people, and I think a lot of it comes from maybe insecurity or inferiority, and they're, well, yeah, you did
Yeah.
that, but just wait until this happens, or
Yeah.
you should have been there when I did this.
Mhm.
And again, I guess the people that do that are not aware of how off-putting that is. And I know I've done it before, I'm sure, but I try not to. But those conversations that you have with people who just they're talking about themselves and what they've done, and you're asking them about themselves, but they don't ever return that. It gets awkward really fast because you just feel like they're not interested in anything you have to say, and they're not interested in your experiences or in you. And so I find myself not really caring to seek out their company. And I know I shouldn't be like that because, I've been thinking about this lesson for this weekend, the precious souls, the ones that are precious to God. Every single soul in the whole world is precious to him. So
Mhm.
I need to see them that way. But it's some people make it harder than other people.
Yeah. Have you ever sat through a whole conversation and the reverse is true? Like you, at the end of that conversation, when they walked off, you realize I talked about myself the whole time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that you were trying to talk about yourself the whole time, it's that the other person was so good
Yeah.
about showing their
Mm-hmm.
interest in you, and they led the conversation and made it about you, and then when they walk off, you're like, did I ever even
Yeah.
return the favor and ask
Mm-hmm.
about them and what their week looks like? Or, you
Yeah.
know, and I was thinking too about the whole know-it-all concept of, letting people celebrate their victories wherever they are in their learning journey. Um, they might just starting out in something new that you have already been through and experienced, and it might be tempting to say, "Oh, well, and also blah 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 blah,"
Mm-hmm.
but just say, "Oh, that's really interesting," and let them enjoy that accomplishment wherever they are. And I think
Yeah.
this is so true spiritually. I think
Mm-hmm.
about brand new Christians or people trying to deepen their Bible study, and little choices that they've made or things that they're proud of. And maybe you've been a Christian for years and years and years, and you're kind of going, oh, wow, okay.
Uh-huh.
But let them rejoice in
Mm-hmm.
that victory and that growth wherever they are, and that's a really likable trait, is
Yeah.
without the need to say, well, soon you'll be able to,
Right.
you know, to make them feel a little bit less than or not quite there yet or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Just some things that we might end up doing in conversation without intending to, and it can come across less supportive or condescending even, or things like that.
Yeah. I think we can make things worse with people that do things like that by getting upset about it.
Hmm.
And like we were just talking about, I think when you invest in someone and you decide, I'm going to like this person, I'm going to try my hardest to like this person.
I will like this person.
Yeah. And when we, it's that old saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. But just deciding, I'm going to have a better attitude about this person. This might happen when I see them the next time, but okay, I'm going to do what I need to do, which is indicate interest in them and ask them questions and be friendly to them and be likable to them, or do what I can to be likable. And hopefully they'll absorb some of those traits. But if we just, and I can feel this in myself, have that look on my face of, oh boy, here he comes or here she comes, and
Hmm.
have to just make it through the next 5 minutes, and then I don't have to see him again for another whatever week. That just makes things worse. It makes things worse mentally for me, and it doesn't help them at all. So I think we can do what we can to improve the situation by how we react to someone that's not very likable.
Yes, so true. So true. Well, these are just things that we've just been kind of, off the top of our head chit chatting about and what we think and our opinion and all that. And I started thinking about this topic biblically. Does the Bible really even have anything to say about just being likable? And I have to think that it does matter to God, and it is important because we're trying to draw people to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have no interest in learning about our Savior if we are off putting.
Yeah.
We're representing him, and they don't even really want to be around us because we're just not likable. And so I wasn't even quite sure at
How to
first
look it up.
where to go, but when I
Uh,
started thinking about it, I thought, really, this is the best advice. And I think about it even with our children, teaching them these things as they grow up and form their own friendships, and our college kids as they're stepping out into the world. And but so, for instance, First Thessalonians 4 verses 9 through 12. But think of it in this concept of how we come across and relate with other people. About your love for one another, we do not need to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. And in fact, you do love all of God's family throughout Macedonia. Yet, we urge you, brothers and sisters, to do so more and more. And just right there, how many times do we say, take it or leave it? I am what I am. I'm not mean to anybody, and I'm a nice enough person. So, but it's almost like, yes, you love each other, but keep striving to be even better about it and to do so more and more. And then goes on to say, as if to describe, what this might look like, which I've never put these together before, but verse 11 says, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. But I just thought he kind of ties this love that we have for each other and is abounding in it still more and more with leading a quiet life, minding your own business, and how many times does us getting in somebody else's business, whether it's making assumptions about them or judgments or offering things that weren't ever asked for,
Yeah.
How many times is that off-putting in our relationship? So that one was really good. Keep growing in your love more and more, mind your own business. And then pretty much all of Romans 12, which I feel like we keep coming back to that text.
So practical.
Yes, but particularly in these verses, again, think about our relationships. The first one in verse 9, he says, be sincere in your love for one another. And I think about all those little things that we've mentioned that, well, this would help if you were not frowning and you were smiling instead, or this would help if you actually acted interested in other people instead of being self-absorbed, and this would help. But all of that has to be sincere.
Yeah.
Because if it's fake, in any way and it's very put-offing. Off-putting. I was like, that didn't sound right. It's very off-putting. Be sincere in your love for one another. Verse 10 says, be devoted to others. And I think it'd be fun to kind of camp out on that word devoted to see, it might be something a little bit different than what we're thinking we're accomplishing.
Yeah.
Verse 10, honor one another above yourselves. That will definitely make you a likable person.
Absolutely.
Verse 12, he says, be joyful and patient. And the opposite of those things, somebody who is not a joyful person, they always have something to complain about or gripe about or whine about, is not likable. Somebody who is impatient with other people and the world at large, does not draw people to themselves.
I am very impatient with impatient people. It's just not right, is it?
No. And then verse 13 talks about sharing with others and being hospitable, opening your home. And then verse 15 is the one that talks about rejoicing with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. So being with people and experiencing their life with them. Verse 16 then says, do not be proud or conceited, which I think kind of goes back to that whole know-it-all, kind of attitude. So I'm just reading through this chapter and I'm thinking, I feel like everything he is pointing out to build unity, amongst Christians and are things that if we practiced them would make us likable people.
Yeah.
In general. And then the last thing I'll share that I seem to keep seeing over and over in the word was this whole idea of cheerfulness.
Smiles.
Yeah, and I feel like we've seen this before, or we've talked about this before, about how people will say, God never told us to be happy, just holy, or, people will take exceptions with the difference between joy and happiness and all that. And yet, the Bible has tons to say about presenting a joyful countenance, being cheerful, doing things cheerfully. Proverbs 17:22 says, a joyful heart is good medicine. And what are you giving others when they're around you, and how do they feel when they leave you? Proverbs 15:13, a glad heart makes a cheerful face. And then Proverbs 15:30, bright eyes gladden the heart. So again, it's that whole countenance, and then in the New Testament, I found it interesting that God mentions cheerfulness when it comes to things that we do in our service to him, like giving. He wants it to be done cheerfully, not grudgingly. 2 Corinthians 9:7. And then when we're extending mercy to others, he wants us to do it cheerfully. Romans 12, verse 8. So, again, sincere cheerfulness, not that over the top, unlikable cheerfulness, fake cheerfulness. So when I looked at all of that, the things that I found, it seems like if we were going to kind of summarize it all, what the word has to say about it, it'd be number 1, be interested in others, which is what you said right out of the gate. Number 2, cheerfulness. And then number 3, sincerity. those seem to be the three things that they keep all coming back to be likable, which we want to so that we can draw others to Christ.
Yeah. While you were talking, it made me remember Brian Ketchum spoke in chapel last week, trying to encourage the students. It was a rough last quarter. I mean, it's always got some rough stuff going on, but I think it was just a lot of them were struggling. And so Brian's just an encouraging person, but
He really
he
is.
had an excellent lesson in chapel, and he was talking about Hebrews 6:9. And he said, beloved, it's a quote from there, beloved, we are convinced of better things about you. But the passage says, but beloved, we are convinced of better things concerning you and things that accompany salvation, though we are speaking in this way. For God is not unjust so as to forget your work and the love which you have shown toward his name in having ministered and in still ministering to the saints. But he made the points that the first point that he made was that your peers are convinced of better things for you. And he looked around the room and he was saying, we're all on each other's side. We are all pulling for one another, and we all are convinced that there are better things for us, talking about Barnabas and John Mark, and we need to be willing to say good things about our peers. And that's going to make us likable. And I know that our whole goal in life is not to be likable, but our goal in life is to be pleasing to Christ. And you've just given us lots of reasons why he says we should, but these things are important too. We need to hear from one another. We need to feel that confidence, I guess, from one another that I believe in you. And that is super likable when someone has confidence in you and believes in you. And that just gives you that boost that you need. And I had never really thought about that with this passage. He went on to talk about how your instructors are convinced of better things for you. And then he said, God, above all, is convinced of better things in me. And so I just thought that was interesting to think about. There's a lot of things in scripture that talk about our countenance and our mental, how would you say that? How we are able to mentally decide and be convinced about things that are good and better and cheerful and positive. And we can convey that to other people and how we present ourselves.
I love that. That is so good. And I think about how much that is needed for people to hear that they can do it, they can succeed. I believe in you. I see the best in you. Because think about everything that we face in the world.
Yeah.
That's beating you down is the exact opposite of that. And of
Right.
course, where else should we get that encouragement than from our Christian family?
Right.
I think about that a lot with my own husband because Neil's really good about that. He's an encourager, and he's good
definitely.
at being encouraging to me. And sometimes he'll say things to me, and in my mind, I'm going, "That's sweet, but I know you know better because you know what I've done, and you know my history, and you know my struggles." And he does, but he still believes in me, and he wants me to know that,
Right.
and I love him for that, and I treasure that, and it means a lot to me to hear that from him. So you are so right. I can't think of a greater gift or things that we could do for the people around us, the precious souls, um, than to extend that to them. It's almost like we keep going back to this word grace in all of these episodes. Yeah, you may know somebody's past or their struggles, or you may be privy to something that's happened in their life. And when they know that and you still say things to them that show them, you're wonderful at this, I believe in you, you're one of the best, blah, 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 I know.
It's like Jesus to Peter, when he
Yes.
said, Satan has desired to have you and sift you like wheat. And he goes on to say, but when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. And so Jesus knew what he was going to do. And yet he still instilled confidence in him that he was still useful to God. So that is a huge one that didn't even occur to me until we were talking about this. Confidence in people.
Well, so our go forward for the week would be to be likable. And it doesn't involve fitting in, being up with the latest trends, feeling like we have to be all that for everybody around us and be successful. And it involves being sincere and showing interest and encouraging people and what else did I say? Being cheerful, those types of things. That's what we do going forward when we engage with other people. Are you looking at the time?
No, someone just tried to FaceTime me and
Oh.
didn't set this on do not disturb.
I know you have a
You didn't
cutoff
hear
to
that?
look. No,
Oh,
I
sorry.
didn't hear
Okay.
it. So
Okay.
I just saw you. You looked startled, and then you looked at the time, and I thought, oh, have we gone past your cutoff time? Because I
No,
know
it was
you have
that
to
da,
go.
da, 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 da.
Oh.
Oh, can't believe you didn't hear it.
No, none of that came across. Okay, so is there anything you want to add to this topic before we move on? And
I'd rather
you
keep talking
are
about the topic than do the will it illustrate.
Okay, I don't know if we were any good about at it last week or not, but Neil says that's okay because that makes it better. So all the pressure is off. So you get to go first. I'm going to give you, will it illustrate? I'm going to give you this time a random fact instead of a news item. Okay. The random fact is people once ate arsenic to improve their skin. I don't know if
I
you knew
saw
that or
that
not.
this morning. I
What?
came across that this morning.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I actually looked up random facts. It wasn't even a news article.
That's
Okay.
Yeah.
This one, and this was a couple of days ago. Okay, so it said that a lot of Victorians' cosmetics, things that they would put on their skin, were riddled with arsenic. But there were also products on the market in the late 1800s, like this is what it was called: safe arsenic complexion wafers
Yummy.
that she would eat, and they were created by a doctor. And they claim to get rid of freckles, blackheads, and other facial disfigurements. There's your random fact, Carla.
Will it illustrate?
Your face.
Well, Kathy, to say things like you say them, sometimes the things that we think are good for us are really poisonous. Among them, things that I can't think of right now. But sometimes it sounds really good. And even somebody that you think is really smart tells you it's good, but it turns out to not be good. So you need to know the truth about things so that you can not eat arsenic.
You were doing so good.
That's the best I can do.
I'm impressed. That was pretty good.
No, I saw that this morning because I Googled
That's
random
so
facts
wild.
too. So it came up.
So
So
we
you may
saw
have
the same
you may
thing.
have come across this one too.
All right. Okay.
Kathy, did you know that McDonald's once created broccoli that tasted like bubble gum? To bring this unusual vision to life, McDonald's turned to its research and development team. Food scientists and flavor experts were tasked with developing a broccoli variety that not only had the distinctive taste of bubblegum, but also retained the same nutritional value. It was a challenging endeavor as broccoli, a cruciferous, are you impressed that I know how to say that?
I am very impressed.
Cruciferous vegetable has a naturally strong and somewhat bitter flavor, quite a far cry from the sugary sweetness of bubblegum. So it goes on to say, ultimately, McD's candy-flavored broccoli never made it to the chain's menu. The project was eventually shelved, possibly due to the insurmountable flavor challenges or concerns about the reception of such a unique product.
I did not.
Did I give you enough time to?
Yes, thank you. First of all, that's disgusting.
I know.
So Carla, do not sugarcoat the gospel. There are truths that people need to hear because it's good for them. And if you try and sugarcoat it, you're just going to mess it up.
Good one. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Good one.
Do you have something good for you?
I do. It's kind of an unusual. It's a little bit different, but I thought it would be helpful because I'm always looking for things like this. But it's an icebreaker that I've actually tried. Yeah.
Oh, good.
But when I looked this up, it's a little bit different than I've done it. They call it concentric circles. And I did this in a line. And I think I've told you about it before, but maybe not on the podcast. Mm-hmm. But this is where you divide up into two groups. Make a big outer circle and a big inner circle with people, and they face each other. They line up facing each other. So you have the same number in each circle. And then you provide them with questions that they ask one another, but you have a timer. You only get like 2 minutes to discuss one question. So let me read what they say. Pairs discuss their answers to a getting to know you question, then they rotate for the next question, forming a new partnership. So it's kind of like speed dating. In fact, I think that's what I called it. And it was in my house. And so it was so loud because there was like 30 women. So you got 15
fun.
pairs, but it was fun and it was non-threatening because you know how, I mean, I'm this way. If there's somebody that has been, like when we go back to Dripping Springs and there's people there that I don't know, and I'm like, I'm supposed to know them and I haven't introduced myself. And then it just gets more awkward the longer you put it off.
Right.
And so this way you have the questions. You provide them ahead of time. Something like what they have is, do you play sports? Do you consider yourself shy or outgoing? What's the last movie you saw? So there's simple things like that.
Yeah.
But it's like a conversation starter that's easy, but you only have a short period of time. So you get in these circles and you have that first question, then you blow a whistle or you sound a timer or something, and then the inner circle shifts left or right or whatever. So one circle's not moving. And so you have a certain amount of time, 30 minutes, you do this, and you might possibly speak to each person that you're opposite. And it's, some people hate icebreakers. I don't enjoy them in particular, but they're helpful in a lot of circumstances. So it's just that they call it concentric circles. I called it speed, and not speed dating, of course, but I called it speed getting to know you or something like that. And so it was fun. So that's my something good for you.
That's very timely too, because somebody literally just asked me this week for icebreaker ideas. So thanks for that.
Okay.
All right, mine is a game. It's called The Chameleon. Have you ever heard of that?
No, never seen it.
So I learned this game from Cassie Adkins a few weeks ago. They introduced us to it. It is so much fun. We had so much fun playing it that we ended up buying it for ourselves and couldn't wait to play it with our own family members. But see if I can explain it quickly. You've got a topic with a bunch of words on it that go with that theme on a card in the middle of the table. Everybody else is handed a card, and one of those cards is going to say, "You are the chameleon." Everybody else's card is going to have a little code on it that's going to let you know which word on that card in the middle of the table is the secret word for the round. So everybody knows what that same word is except for the person who's the chameleon. So you go around the room and you have to say a word that gives a little clue to the secret word. That you know what it is. So it has to be specific enough that everybody knows, oh, okay, you're not the chameleon. But it has to be generic enough that you're not giving the word away to the chameleon. Because when it's the chameleon's turn, they have to pull it off like they know which word it is. So they're kind of listening to what everybody else is saying, and trying to. And so then everybody gives their word, and at the end, you vote who you think the chameleon is. And it ends up being hilarious because you've got people debating, no, I don't think it's this person because they actually said blah, 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 or people defending their word that they've given. It is so much fun. It's a great.
Sounds fun.
It is. It's a great group game. So it's called The Chameleon.
Good deal.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Good conversation. I think you're very likable.
Well, I like you too.
I like you too. Let's be friends.
Okay. I'll think about it.
Okay. Oh. Do you like me? Check yes or no.
Definitely yes.
Well, have a good trip, a safe trip. I know it'll be a wonderful encouragement to the ladies this weekend, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. And until then,
keep looking up.
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.